I've stress tested Bambu's new H2C tool changer printer with over 350 hours of non-stop printing to answer the big questions. How much waste does a tool changer printer really generate? Can it survive the stress of all of those extra moving parts? And does it still deliver the crisp, defect-free print quality that Bambu is known for? This minimalist tool changer claims to be faster, it claims to be smarter and long-lasting, but is that just hype, or is it really the next big leap in 3D printing? Let's find out if this tool changer is truly a game changer. And I'm also going to share the key to have success every time with color printing on complex models like this one. I've packed so much into this short video, so stick around, you won't want to miss this one. The H2C is engineered with the same core design as the H2D, the same frame, same size, most of the same parts. But the thing is, I've already put 800 hours or over that on my H2D, and it's easily becoming one of my most used printers. And in all the time, the only issue I ran into was at the very beginning with the high flow hot end that I broke when I was testing it, and some nozzle socks finally wearing out. So I grabbed replacements, and that is it. After hundreds of hours, this machine does keep on going. Now the H2C isn't just the same machine with a tool changer rack tucked neatly inside. It's actually hiding a whole series of clever upgrades. The head still carries its familiar dual hot end setup, and the left side remains kind of untouched, but the right side has been completely reinvented. Now it features an induction heater paired with a brand new chuck design, and the result is something that looks radically different from what you'd normally see. Each tool is now called an induction hot end, and it is intelligent with a circuit board mounted to the top to store and relay information back and forth to the printer. The connection is non-contact, meaning no wear and tear over time on these, and add to that a heat sink, integrated magnets on both sides, and precision alignment holes that guide each hot end into the rack exactly where it belongs. The heating section is now elongated and wrapped in a thin insulation, while the upper and lower sections are designed to let the hot ends function as true tools, positioned with CNC level accuracy. The swap process is really fast, so I had to slow down my recording just to capture what was happening. So first the head moves to the rack, which rises into position. A steel pin lifts at the last second and locks into the locking pull handle. The head shifts over slightly, pulling that bar out to release the tension on each of the induction hot ends. But the hot end doesn't just drop, it's actually held in position by one of the magnets before then being placed into an empty slot. The printer then grabs a new hot end. This time the locking pull handle pushes in, pulling that hot end upward into place. And that upward pull is actually critical, just like a CNC machine, and it's both elegant and brilliantly simple. And the locking pull handle even works with the induction hot ends to make sure that it is at the correct final position, thanks to these two tiny magnets that are attached to it. The induction heater setup is really what makes all of this possible. It can reach PLA printing temperature in just 8 to 9 seconds. That is from chamber temperature, which is kind of the secret behind the ultra-fast filament swaps. And when you want more than 2 colors, the system automatically retracts filament back into the AMS and feeds in the new one. That not only keeps the filament perfectly dry and in storage, but also synchronizes the entire process so that the color changes happen more in parallel or as much as possible. That cuts the total swap time down to just a few seconds. The printer works whether you're using the original AMS, the newer AMS 2 Pro, or the AMS high temperature. And this setup scales all the way up to 24 colors. The rack itself holds 6 induction hot ends, though one slot needs to remain empty, so the active induction hot end has somewhere to park. That's the one in the head. And then you can add in the left side hot end, and you've got 7 materials or colors ready to go without any additional purging required. So if you want even more colors or materials, that's where the system's intelligence comes in. It tracks which colors and materials are already loaded into the hot end, and then it selects the closest match by color and by material for the next swap. That's going to minimize the purge volume to reduce waste by as much as possible. Now, of course, printing with dozens of colors means you're going to need more filament and additional AMS units, but at least the option is there, and it is surprisingly streamlined for such a complex workflow. The H2C has a functional replacement for the smoky clear cover you'd recognize from the H2D. The upgrade isn't just cosmetic though, it's actually functional. When printing with higher temperature materials inside a heated chamber, the system ensures the non-contact electronics sitting above the heat sinks stay nice and cool. It's a smart safeguard that keeps the performance stable even under the most demanding conditions, and it's another example how every detail of the design has been thought through for reliability. And it also has these cool built-in LED lights so you can see at a glance which side is active at all times. The build platform on this printer has been re-engineered to accommodate the integrated tool rack. As a result, the build plate width is actually reduced by about 20 millimeters on the right-hand side compared to the H2D, while the height and the depth actually remain the exact same. Most importantly though, both the left and right hot ends still deliver the exact same effective reach, 300 millimeters across the width of the bed, so the usable print area is still preserved. What really stands out is the evidence of their long-term foresight. The vision encoder developed for the H2D and H2S slots into this machine, which underscores the continuity of their entire ecosystem. Now, the full suite of modular add-ons, the laser, the cutter, the plotter, and also their dedicated platforms are all compatible here as well. So this level of cross-compatibility shows that Bambu has been planning this evolution for quite a while, ensuring that their existing accessories fully integrate with this new machine. With the option to print with so many materials and colors, I don't believe that manually calibrating each one of them is going to happen. It would just be far too time-consuming and tedious, not to mention the waste in material for that as well. So like any of Bambu's new printers, this printer auto-calibrates filament for dynamic flow, also known as pressure advance, using an eddy current sensor. The only caution I would say is if you're switching to some other brand with unknown tolerances, the dynamic flow calibration can still happen automatically, but volumetric flow would still need to be done manually. So sticking with Bambu filament on this printer or another high precision filament will save you a ton of time. To really see what this printer is capable of, I pushed it into the absolute worst case scenario. So I turned calibration on for every single print. That would be similar to if you're going to be changing filament every time to something different, whether it's a different color or a different material as well. And that way we get a good picture of what the maximum possible waste is with this printer under the worst case scenario. Now, while I was testing, Bambu introduced an optimized prime tower, giving the option for a smaller tower, and I tried it out and the results were really good. So some of my early towers were really big and oversized, but the newer ones are much more compact and they seem to work just as well. And that's now the setting that I use every time. Prime towers are pretty much unavoidable in multicolor printing because as the hot end cools, even the tiniest amount of oozing reduces nozzle pressure. So fresh filament needs to be pushed in to ensure that every single detail, even the absolute smallest extrusion of every color or every material, is extruded exactly where it needs to be. This is all the waste that I've generated over the course of nearly 350 print hours right now. And when that print finally finishes in a few hours, it'll be over 350 print hours. I will not, unfortunately, be able to include that waste because it's still going. So here I have what I would consider to be my mistakes, a little bit of a learning curve and things that I screwed up on. Here I have printer prime towers and maybe some brims and other little bits. And then in this box here, I have that was attached to the back of the printer, all of the printer poop. And this is considering I had calibration turned on for every single print. So that means every color was calibrated every time I started a new print. So this is the absolute worst case scenario. We'll take a look at that in a second too. That's 430 grams and that's 12.5 ounces. This includes the old prime towers and the newer ones. You can see there's quite a big difference in size. So the new ones are going to be lighter, of course, than the old style. 469 grams or 1 pound, 0.5 ounces. Let's see how much printer poop has actually come out in the worst case scenario with this printer. So we have 62 grams, 2.2 ounces of printer poop. And again, this is the worst case scenario. So if you just print with the same colors over and over again, it will calibrate once. So that will be a few poops per calibration. And then that's it. You won't need to do it again for that filament. So that should cut down on this dramatically. You'd probably only see a third or even a quarter of what I have in here. So how much you save is really completely dependent on what you normally print and the filament that you use. If you're printing a big PLA color print like this one, you could save up to 20 hours of print time versus the H2D and 42 hours versus the X1 or P1 printers. That would be 400 to 500 grams of filament versus the H2D and nearly a kilogram of filament versus the X1, P1 type printers. With this printer changing from one tool to the next, the one big question that comes to mind is how is the print quality affected? And I think that's why it was necessary to run hundreds of hours of tests on this printer to see. So this is a print that I ran after 300 print hours, and this is what the quality looks like. And this is, again, like all my test prints, under harsh lighting, so it actually looks quite a bit better in regular lighting. So I was using non-Bambu filaments to start with, and since the tolerances on those have a much wider range, the final print quality suffered a little bit. So it's important to stick with a filament that has tighter tolerances like the Prusament or like Bambu for best print results. So this printer can print soft TPU just like the H2D, but it's only on the right-hand side. That's also true for the H2D. And because soft TPU cannot be fed automatically, I would imagine that for TPU color changes, it would need to be done manually. It prints TPU really well, and I printed these shoes for my daughter. They were designed by Cloudberry, and they're way better than I expected them to be, and they seem pretty durable, but color changing TPU would be tough unless you're printing with soft TPU on the right, and then maybe TPU for AMS on the left, and get that mix of hardness and also the mix of color. Oh, the pink and the green go perfectly together. Yeah, could use a little jump. After about 300 hours of printing, the nozzle blocker ended up bending down, and it's meant to be flexible, so that in itself isn't really a problem, but I decided to just leave it, and eventually what happened was it bent down far enough to catch onto my prime tower on my very first Hue Forge print. So then I tried to pause it and patch things up, but there was no tower, so it wasn't worth trying to save. So I reprinted it after bending the blocker back into position. And these blockers are consumables, and I do have an extra, but I managed to save mine. I've been around CNC machines for quite a while, and I've seen all types of CNC tool holders, racks, and carousels, and I wondered if it would be possible to have a carousel style rotating around rather than this vertical motion here. And I actually asked the question to Bambu, and the reason for this style is for simplicity, but also for longevity as well. It's not overcomplicated, and it's proven to work, and it will just last. So it probably could have had a carousel, but it would have caused more complexity and more cost as well. There is a lot to like about this printer, and if there is anything that I would still want to work on, it's the ability to print softer materials more easily. But I have to be honest too, TPU is pretty expensive, and while I think it's cool to print shoes or other soft things, it's probably not the best use of time for a printer like this. Soft material still prints pretty slowly, so that means your printer is tied up for a while. TPU is also much more slippery than you might think. If you're using it for shoes, you need to be aware that you can slip much more easily. So I'd recommend finding and gluing on a generic shoe tread for better traction. That said, I will print myself a pair of shoes on this printer and test them over a longer period of time and report back the results. Who knows, maybe there are some hidden benefits. And I think 3D scanning a foot and making a shoe to perfectly fit does seem like a pretty good idea. So how does the nozzle wiping work with the different hot ends? And I've tested this for quite a few different filaments, and the nozzle wiping seems to work great. There are little bits being thrown around the chamber as they get scrubbed off of the different nozzles. But here are some examples of what they look like after printing with them for up to 350 hours. And honestly, they look almost brand new. So I don't think there's an issue here. I would want to test this over a long period of time on a whole bunch of other different materials as well to get a really solid answer. But for now, it looks really good. How many print hours are on each hot end? This information isn't actually available yet, but I have put that request into Bambu. It might be a good idea to have this info so you know which hot ends need a cold pull or maybe eventually need to be replaced if you're printing with abrasive filaments. One side note too, I did ask, and it looks like there may be tungsten carbide versions being released in the future as well. Those will likely have a slightly higher max flow rate since it's a more conductive material and will also last even longer than standard hardened steel versions. And communication is wireless in the hot ends, but there are still parts that have to touch. That's not something that you can really avoid. There is a retention knob at the top of each induction hot end and also a locking pull handle. and the end of the locking pole handle will need to have oil applied to it when it looks a little bit dry, and that reduces friction and wear and tear on that part. It has a cycle life of approximately 300,000, but probably more if you make sure to keep it lubricated. And for me, I've been using a tiny paintbrush just to make sure that it stays lubricated. I want to keep this video as short as humanly possible, so I thought I would show you some of the print results while I talk about some of the questions that might come up about this printer. So how much does this actually cost and what's available? So for anyone who wants to upgrade their H2D to the H2C, a kit will be available in the first quarter of 2026. I do not have a price on that yet. For the H2C with the AMS2 Pro, that's just the combo with an AMS, $23.99 US. For the H2C laser full combo with the 10-watt laser, that's $2,949 US. For the H2C laser full combo with the 40-watt laser, that's $3,599 US. But there is no option for just the printer itself, and that's probably because it needs at least one AMS. For the induction hot ends, the price per hot end will be at $39. That's from 0.2 millimeters up to 0.8 millimeters. There will also be a high flow version of the induction hot end, and that is going to be available from 0.4 all the way up to 0.8, and that will be at $69 US for that one. Prices, of course, can change, but these are the prices that I have at the time of making this video, and the prices are actually lower than I expected them to be. Do I want to upgrade my H2D? Yes, I do. I'd really like to make an upgrade video to show how to do it when the time comes. So how do you get your prints from looking like this, half a print, which is pretty much useless, to this, 42 hours of nonstop printing with no issues at all? First problem was that the tree supports that I put on were really spindly. Look how small that is. So I addressed the branch size on the tree supports. They are much larger. Now they're 8 millimeters. I changed it from strong tree supports to organic tree supports. That has a much more of a flowing shape. It is actually stronger. No abrupt changes in direction. I also changed the angle, so it's no longer 45 degrees. I changed it to 30 degrees. I also changed the bottom layer. It was set to 90% density. I changed it to 100% density for a better bond. Of course, I used glue stick, the support interface layer that I have in here. That allows for a very easy release of the part from the support. That's great, but not during a print. So during the print, if your supports are too small and you don't have enough contact area between that interface layer there, it can come off, which is what happened. That is supposed to be there. And also the angle of the supports as well. You can see they come at an angle here and backward, and the arms require quite a bit of support because they don't connect to the torso up until this area here. So all of that area from here to here would otherwise be unsupported. So you need lots of support, very strong supports, to make sure that these end up in the exact location where they're supposed to be by the time they connect to the torso. There is one more thing that I changed, and that is the bed temperature during the print. It was standard 55 degrees Celsius. I changed it to 60 degrees Celsius, and that's in part because I was having to open and close the door, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't lose adhesion. So this is a character I created just for this video to test out this printer. His name is Collapse, and he gets his energy from the void of space. Well, I never would have considered printing something like this. There would have been way too much waste in filament and way too much waste in time as well. So I guess from that perspective, you could consider it to be a game changer. I think tool changer type printers will be the future of 3D printing. Exactly which direction they're going to go, I don't know for sure. It kind of depends on the application. So Bambu has a great solution. They've simplified it in this case to be very robust so that it does not break down over time. That's part of the reason why I wanted to put so many hours on this printer, to make sure that it was properly tested. And just after I finish this video, I'm going to be trying out some 3D printed shoes for myself as well. And I want to get those on here. And I'll probably experiment a little bit with color changing some harder TPUs with the soft TPU as well. Very interested to see how I can utilize the different tools in here and different sizes of nozzles as well, and mix that up a little bit. Typically, I'll be using that more from an engineering standpoint in creating parts that are actually functional. But I think I'll also probably try and print more things like this as well and experiment with different models also. If you have any questions I have not answered yet, let me know and I will get back to you down there in the comments. I also will add a link to the H2C printer down there below in the description, but I also have a very short list of my top rated printers, but with more than 360 hours of printing. And the only failure is really coming down to the issues with supports and the way that I sliced the model. I think it deserves to be at the top. I've actually nicknamed it the H2C Goro, so expect to see more of this printer in future videos as well. I hope you found this video interesting and informative. Feel free to give the video a like if you enjoyed it and found it helpful. Also by subscribing to the channel as well if you haven't already. Thank you to Bambu for sending this printer to me to review. This was by far the most time I've taken to make a review video of any that I've done so far, and hopefully it showed at least a little bit in this video. And of course, a big thanks to my patrons as well for helping to make these videos possible. Take care. I hope to see you on the next one. Well, I think I'm going to have to stop it. That's a fist.